It's not good to be broke ever, but when you're young and broke, it's kind of an inconvenience. When you're old and broke, it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
And, when I was 30 years old, I was divorced. My net worth was basically zero, and I was getting ready to start a company. And I launched a company. I borrowed money from everywhere and everyone and all the things I could do. And I was like, this is either going to work or I'm done for.
Financial independence,
freedom,
financial picture,
independent financially,
financial future,
financial freedom and wealth,
financial independence.
Get your fill, financial independence and long life. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals. And awesome people come on to help us. And you're going to love today's guest, Eric D. Brotman, CFP. We're just going to call him Eric. He is the CEO of BFG Financial Advisors in Maryland. He started in the financial planning industry in 1994, and he launched a startup in 2003, which has grown to over 20 employees and $700 million in assets under management, which is really flipping good. He's the author of 3 books, including the award-winning Don't Retire, Graduate. Eric, thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm so glad to be here. This is going to be a wonderful conversation. I'm excited about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we might as well start with the obvious since it's all around you, don't retire, graduate. So what are we graduating from? What are we graduating, or what does that mean to you?
Sure. I think the concept of retirement is grossly outdated for a lot of reasons. And I can give quantitative reasons, qualitative reasons, but just back of the envelope, the idea of retirement is really a retreat. It's a surrender, and it's a giving up and disappearing, and no one should do it. Seriously, I think retirement needs to be redefined. And so I will first redefine retirement as the absence of needing to work, not the absence of work. Because work is so much who we are and what we value. And if you're doing something you love, you don't want to give it up just because you hit some random age.
Yeah.
So that's first. Graduation, the thought around graduation is that graduation, if you think about it, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, college, PhD program, graduation is the end of something, but it's also the beginning of something. It's the beginning of the next chapter. It's something new. And so I think we should be thinking about retirement not as the end necessarily. Certainly, it's not the last chapter, let's hope. You talk about long life. Retirement in its traditional sense could be 30 or 40 years. That's not a footnote. That's half your adult life.
Right.
But let's start thinking about it graduating to something instead of retiring from something and figuring out what we want to be when we grow up.
I like that a lot. And that I'm still in the process of, I feel like I graduate every couple of years to a different thing. But, even when I speak to young people that are doing their FIRE thing, maybe they're 28 years old. I'm 28 and I'm retired. And I thought, okay, that's how many, like 70 years of just playing golf? I mean, come on.
I get bored in a 3-week vacation.
Exactly.
Honestly, yeah.
If we're going to live a long life, it has to be because we're engaged and interested. You can't just be sitting at home thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do today? It's so boring. I mean, who wants to live, even 10 years that way? Never mind 70.
There's so many different theories on retirement. And let's first think about the fact that retirement was something forced upon people in the 1800s. It was invented as a way to get rid of people who were no longer useful. And Johns Hopkins University here in Baltimore, Johns Hopkins University had a professor Osler, who was they have a building named after this man, but he had a dynamic for retirement that basically said from 20 to 40, those are your productive years. And from 40 to 60, you're tolerable. And beyond 60, you're pretty much useless. I'm not making this up. Like, you should look this up. It's like, holy cow, I'm on my way to useless like this. It's coming. And it's just simply not true. Even the Social Security situation, if you think about it, and we're not going to talk politics at all, but just the math. When Social Security was started, it was started where most people joined the workforce at 18. Most people did not go to college. They started the workforce at 18. They would work until 65, and they were dead at 72.
Yeah.
So you fund this program for almost 40 years, almost 50. And then you have a 7-year period where that's most of what you live on. And you may have had a pension back in the day. Those are
Yeah.
dinosaurs, but that was it. Today, young people don't hit the workforce till 22, 23. If they want to be
Sometimes
doctors
longer.
or something, it could be 30.
Yep.
And they want to retire at 55 and could live to be 107. And beyond that, they're not even entering the workforce at zero. They're entering it at minus $130,000 because of student loans. Like they're
Yeah.
starting in a hole. They're not starting on level terrain, and the math doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't fund something for 25 years and then pull from it for 50 and expect that to work for anyone ever. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. That's for sure. As we see.
Yeah, well, again, not talking politics, just saying
Math.
math. It is essentially a type of defined benefit pension. It's also the world's largest Ponzi scheme if you really looked at it.
Oh, yeah.
But nonetheless, you have to have enough people paying in so the people at the top can start pulling out. And the government and even the pension firms, they kind of are rooting for their participants to die.
Yeah.
It's the most bizarre thing ever. But in order for solvency to happen based on current formulas, people need to stop living so long. Well, isn't that a flying in the face of the entire purpose of your show? Like, and
Absolutely.
I don't want to sign up for dying young. Thank you very much. So, they're not getting volunteers for that.
Right.
So we're all going to be here.
But dying young, since you bring it up, is also a lot of people's retirement plan, right? I mean, they have X amount of money, and if they live beyond that, uh-oh.
Yes. It's been said that retirement has three phases. I suspect you've heard this before: the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go. The go-go being we're retired, we can't wait to travel, we want to see the world, we're going to play the best golf courses or see the seven wonders, or we're going to do something great, and we're going to spend 10 years on cruise ships, and people do all the go-go's. And then there's sort of the slow go where it's like, it hurts a little, and I don't think I'm going to do the walk, that I would have, the hike or the bike or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I still want to visit grandkids. I'm going to do things, but I'm not going to be spending the kind of money that you do when you're really being
Right.
ambitious. And then unfortunately, a lot of people have the no-go, which is where health becomes a problem. And then and that's a whole different issue in terms of the financial impact of aging and of declining health.
Yeah. And and we don't need to talk about that piece of it. Like, it would be great if you could spend all your money before you get there.
I remember as a kid visiting my father's office, and he had a book on his desk, and I don't know who wrote it. I don't even know if it was real, but it said How to Die Broke. And the idea was you spend your last dollar with your last breath and you've won.
Yeah.
And as a potential heir, I thought this was a terrible book for him to read and I should
Right.
hide it. And yet he's done a beautiful job, actually, of making sure that that's what happens. I told him when he was in his 60s, and he's 85 now, but when he was in his 60s, I said, do me a favor, go out today and earn my inheritance. And I was kidding, of course, but it's not good to be broke ever. But when you're young and broke, it's kind of an inconvenience. When you're old and broke, it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
And, when I was 30 years old, I was divorced. My net worth was basically zero, and I was getting ready to start a company. And I launched a company. I borrowed money from everywhere and everyone and all the things I could do. And I was like, this is either going to work or I'm done for. And, I had gone through a 10-year period, my 20s. People who think, oh, I didn't start till I was 30 or 35 or 40. It's not too late. It's
Yeah.
really not. This is a marathon, not a sprint. It helps to start at 20. But so many of us make so many mistakes in our 20s. And frankly, that's when you should make them.
Yeah.
Make a
Absolutely.
big mistake when your account has $5,000 in it, not when it has $500,000 in it. If you're going to make a mistake, learn a lesson, don't repeat it, and do it when you're young enough to recover. That's all.
Yeah, that's excellent advice, actually. But let's say we didn't. Let's say we sort of, procrastinated at making
Mhm,
mistakes, or just kept making, potentially failing forward, but
mhm.
still not accumulating a lot of wealth along the way. And now we're a certain age and we're like, oh, crap, I don't have the money to retire. I mean, you say that, your website, and I think also probably on your podcast, which is coming back, which we can talk about in a minute,
Yeah, yeah.
that you can plan for financial freedom at any age.
Yep.
So how could that be possible if you spent your whole life, spending everything or losing everything in bad investments?
Well, you'll notice I didn't say it was easy. Like anything else, the sooner you start, the easier it is.
Yeah,
So, if you're trying to run 20 miles and you have 6 hours to do it and you start right away, you're better off than if you've waited for 4 hours, sat around, and then tried to sprint for 2 hours.
right.
And this financially, it's the same thing. It definitely benefits you to start early, but there are habits that can be developed at any age. And sometimes there's tough love. I mean, a financial advisor who's worth his or her salt is not going to say, "Oh, you're doing great." They're going to say, "This isn't working,
Yeah,
and fire me if I'm too abrupt for you, but you're not going to ever retire if you do it this way, and we have to make some critical change." In the
yeah,
same way, you don't want your doctor to say you're doing great. You want them to say there's something we got to look at.
yeah,
And so financially, it does it does benefit people to start immediately, whether they're 35 or 55 today.
yeah,
Start immediately and get some help, have navigation. And it doesn't mean necessarily paid help. It could just be that there's a workbook or a guide or something. I might know of one, but there's you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money to get the advice you need. In fact, that's sometimes what people think is that, oh, financial advice must be super expensive and I'm not rich and therefore no one's going to talk to me because I don't have a whole lot of money. And that is true at a lot of places, but it's not true everywhere. And so
yeah,
finding folks who will help you, um, and it's not charity. It's a legitimate business strategy to work with people who are up and coming and are trying to get there. And finding an affordable way to do that is important. But what do you start doing? Well, you look at your spending. I hate the B word, and I know this is a clean show, so I'm gonna try not to say budget more than once. But the B word is bad. Um, Budgets are terrible. They make sense for companies, for departments. They don't make sense for families, in my opinion, because you never stick to them and you will always be frustrated and feel defeated by them. And so I would much rather look at paying yourself first, saying, look, you're bringing in X dollars a year, whatever that number is. Here's the portion you have to put away for yourself. Everything else, spend it any way you want. There are people who want to go to Ruth's Chris once every 3 months and people who want to go to Applebee's every Tuesday. It makes no difference. Do whatever makes you happy. I don't ever want to tell somebody you can't have that latte in the morning. If that's part of your routine and it's part of your joy, go for it. But something else might have to give, and that's okay. You don't need every streaming service. You just don't. So it is making choices. It is deciding what your priorities are.
yeah,
And it's also, I think, real important to look at lifetime learning and education as we get older. For anyone who thinks, I got my undergraduate degree when I was 21, and therefore I know everything I need to know forever. Remember that most of the majors that kids are coming out of school with today didn't exist then, at least for me. And the jobs that we were trained for, if we were trained for jobs at all in liberal arts, which I love, but didn't train you for a job,
no,
they don't exist anymore.
yeah,
So I think learning has to be a continuum. Improve your skills. The worst thing you can do is have a resume or a vitae or something that makes you outdated.
yeah,
You must always have your skills sharp. You must be learning. You must be networking. You know, the hands you don't shake will not shake back. You have to be out and about, and you have to find things that you're passionate about that won't be dreadful for you if you work beyond the year where you thought was the magical retirement age.
yeah,
It's okay to work till you're 80 if you're happy. I've had people on my podcast who are 80 years old and are starting side hustles. Like, this is not just a millennial Gen Z thing.
yeah,
80-year-old starts and they're doing dog walking services because it helps their neighbors. They can make some money, they get some exercise, and they're outside.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be, I'm a nuclear engineer till I'm 80 years old, or I'm dying at my desk at the law firm. It could be that I found ways to supplement my lifestyle and my income while enjoying my life. And that, to me, is still being retired.
yeah, absolutely true. One problem or one, I won't call it a problem, one situation that a lot of entrepreneurs have is that they are putting all their money into their business. And then they're like, well, okay, now what? Right? I haven't been saving. I don't have a stock portfolio. I don't have a bunch of anything, but I actually don't want to do this job for the rest of my life. And I'm not sure I might not have even set it up in such a way that it's immediately saleable.
Mhm.
So is there any hope for people like that?
There's a lot of hope for people like that because what you do have is a potentially tremendous asset. But finding ways to create liquidity around that asset is a completely separate, it's a longer conversation. But I will tell you that having started this firm in 2003, I wanted to make sure I wasn't in that situation. And I actually started selling stock to employees in my late 30s. And I had a lot of people say, "You're out of your mind. Why would you sell something that's going to be that much more valuable?" And I'm thinking, well, if if I have employees who are on the bus, who have joined the team and are owners and care about the bottom line, quite possibly the piece I have left will be more valuable than the piece of the whole if I was by myself.
Right.
So I think it's if you have an internal succession plan, meaning you have 2 or 5 or 17 people who can take over in your absence, um, that's a win. It's very rare for a company started by an entrepreneur to pass to one other entrepreneur. It's very hard. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
People try and pass their enterprises to their son or daughter. And while that might work for one generation, it almost always fails by the next generation because the person buying it doesn't know how to build it. They might know how to manage it, but they don't know how to build it. And if they don't know how to build it, they're not growing it. And it's a lot of times it's not very good.
Yeah.
And that's not all the time. There are certainly examples where it works great. But I think if you're going to do internal succession, you need to groom people and let them get a seat on the bus and be, Hamilton, they say, be in the room when it happens. You got to be in the room when it happens.
Yeah.
And so you have to allow people to have some transparency, have some accountability and participate. And it's not a give out. This is not a handout. It was sold. I've sold equity now.
Yeah.
We'll have 7 equity owners by January 1.
Nice.
Um, and we have built something that allows the majority owner, who is still me, it protects me from them and it protects them from me. It's extremely even-handed and fair. A
Yeah.
2% owner can't railroad a big plan. At the same time, I can't take the steamroller and flatten everybody, and so that's important. For people who don't have an internal succession plan, which is almost everyone, candidly, if you haven't built it that way and you need to look at external succession, then you need to start preparing your enterprise for some kind of sale. And depending what you do for a living, that can be very hard because a lot of times the entrepreneur is more than just the person who owns it. They're the person who understands it, runs it, and manages it, and no one else might have that same skill set. So depending how it is, if you're a CPA and you own a CPA firm, it's not that hard to sell to another CPA firm. They do the same things.
Yeah.
But if you're manufacturing some kind of product that's unique, that's lovely, and it's made you a nice living, you've got to find somebody who A, knows how to, and B, wants to continue that operation. And it's much harder.
Yeah.
So understanding the saleability of it and doing it gradually. I think a lot of people wait for that big payday, and multiples change over time. Sometimes it's a really great seller's market. Sometimes it's a really great buyer's market, just like housing, just like real estate.
Yeah.
It depends on interest rates. It depends on tax situations. I do think it makes sense to diversify. If, Christine, you talk about an entrepreneur who has all of his or her money in their enterprise. I used to joke with people that if, my portfolio is grossly overweighted toward micro cap and financial services. And it's because that's true. If you look at my balance sheet still today, the biggest asset is the company,
Yeah.
but it's not the only asset. And if I was an executive at XYZ Corporation and I owned a lot of XYZ stock, any financial advisor in their right mind would say, I know the stock's done well. I know you're proud of it. I know you're, on the Kool-Aid, but you have to diversify where you're at risk. We've seen the Enrons and the WorldComs and those kinds of stories where employees had everything in the company stock and it went to nothing. And sometimes it's tragic happenstance and sometimes it's fraud, but either way, you can protect yourself from it by diversifying. And it's no different diversifying your public stock than it is your own personal company.
Yeah. That's great advice. It's hard sometimes to take that money out of the company and put it someplace else because you feel like I'm growing it. I'm right. It's if I put it here, I've got control of it. It's going to make the company better and more. But if you get hit by a bus, what are you leaving for your heirs, right? I mean, if they can't immediately take that over, then
Yeah, then it's gone. It dies with you, essentially. And even if you've got life insurance dollars or other things to replace that, which is smart planning for your family, if the business ceases to exist, all of your employees and their families are impacted. Maybe your customers or clients and their families are impacted. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur who really cares about the people who work with you and the people who you represent in any line of work, it's important, I think, to prepare the company to perpetuate beyond you for all of their benefits, if not for your own.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm dead, if the company ceases to exist in a day, I won't know about it. At least I don't think I will. But everybody else left behind has a mess, and it's not necessary. It does take some planning, it does take some thought, it does take a village of advisors sometimes to do that, but it doesn't have to end that way. And that is something that, our succession plan, I'll put it up against anybody's. I really will. And that's not braggery. It's we've spent 15 years working on it. I started a long time ago to make sure the company will run without me, which is a double-edged sword. Because, and you know this because you talk to people all day long who are trying to figure out what is their identity and when they don't have their identity, who are they? And I'm wrestling with that myself right now because this place will run without me entirely. And sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, they don't need me anymore. Like it felt so good to be needed. I'd kind of rather be wanted anyway, but it felt good to be needed. It felt good to be an incredibly important cog in the wheel. And I've done such a good job at making myself irrelevant that sometimes I feel irrelevant. And it's true. And it's hard because
Yeah.
when you ask somebody who they are, and you know this, you ask somebody, tell me about yourself. The first thing they say is, I'm an architect.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Who are you? And so if we tie who we are, we tie our identity to what we do for a living, and then we don't do it for a living, we've lost ourself. That's tragic. And I'm wrestling with it right now with all the advisors and all the thought. And I have helped people do this for 30 years. And now it's my turn and it's different. It's a
Yeah.
hard thing, and I know it's important, and I'm going to do as best I can, but it is different for each of us. We each have our own feelings, and there's a reason why people work beyond the years where they either need to or even want to, and it's because they don't know what else to do. There's only so many golf courses. I said I'm not going from 50 or 60 hours a week to daytime TV and shuffleboard. Not happening.
Right.
Not happening.
No, because then you'll be like the statistics, you're dead within 5 or 10 years, right? Because
Yes,
you just can't, there's nothing to get you out of bed in the morning.
correct. I've seen with parents or grandparents or certainly lots of people we've represented, if you don't have a reason to get out of bed every morning, instead of getting up at 6, now it's 7, now it's 8, now it's 9. Now you're in your pajamas till 1, and it doesn't make sense to get dressed anymore. And people do
Right.
it, and it's not good. It's not healthy.
Yeah,
It's not healthy at
absolutely.
all.
Absolutely true. And I see that so often with, my mom's generation and even younger people
Mhm.
who are just not, they just don't have anything compelling, anything exciting, anything that's really like lighting them up, that, they're not building anything, they're not creating anything. And so they're just like, oh, I mean, the hours just weigh heavily on you, and that's not fun, not
No,
fun.
and I think it's true for professional people, but I also think it's true for full-time parents.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think
empty
empty
nesting.
nesting, which we're also looking at in the next 4 years. I'm looking at no longer being the CEO of the organization I started and being empty nested, probably simultaneously. Brilliant
Uh-oh.
planning. Financially, it makes total sense, but emotionally, I could be a wackadoodle for a little while. Um, but figuring out what that's going to look like, if the good news is there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. The universe is endless in that way.
Yeah.
The tough news is that we get analysis paralysis when we have more than 3 choices of types of ice cream. How am I going to handle an infinite number of choices of how to spend that time? And so, I'm wrestling with that. My wife, who's a stay-at-home mom and a busy human, empty nesting is going to hit her in a different way. And I don't know exactly how it's going to feel for her, but I expect it's going to be extremely difficult and something we have to grapple with as a couple too.
Yeah, absolutely. But luckily you have your podcast to keep you busy. So tell us
The
more about that.
Yeah, no,
Coming back to life.
the podcast Don't Retire, Graduate. We had 5 seasons and took a break to do the book, which the new edition of the book came out earlier this year. The podcast is a weekly show that really talks about what folks plan to do when they graduate. And so I ask a lot of adult people what they want to be when they grow up. And we talk a lot about what that journey is going to look like. And sometimes I interview experts on the show, but it's certainly not designed to be academic. I want experts who can share anecdotal stories of people they worked with, or I want people who've been through it themselves. And so I interview a lot of authors, a lot of speakers, a lot of coaches and consultants, a lot of people who work with others trying to help them. And frankly, the best stories are always the personal ones. So people who've been through it, either successfully or maybe tragically. And so that's coming back January, the first week of January. We'll be back with our first show in some time. I'm very excited to do it again. I mean, I really miss it. And as a podcast host, it's a part of your rhythm. It's a part of your life, and you meet amazing humans, and so that's something I'm excited to bring back. And we'll be recording episodes starting in November. And yeah, I'm ready. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a new adventure, and hopefully, I'm better at it now than I used to be. I don't know about you. Have you ever listened to like your first two episodes?
I will not listen to those.
No, no, I think you should. I think we owe it to ourselves to be like, oh my gosh, I have to check that because we're all human and people sometimes are nervous to be on as a guest. And they have to realize a lot of times the host are as nervous as they are, and you're just doing your best to have a conversation. So I'm excited to bring it back. I'm excited for the branding of the book and the workbook and the podcast to all be linked together. And as I do less and less client-facing work and more growth work for the organization, I trust this will not only impact folks positively, but that it'll also drive opportunities for our team to help people on their financial planning too. So it's a win in all cases.
And also keep you busy and occupied and engaged and excited and right, hopefully bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah, well, it'll keep me in this little podcast studio that we built here in the office, which is like my timeout room. I come back. The people would send me to my room if I needed it, and this would be the room they'd send me to. So it's nice and quiet.
Well,
Yeah,
that's good. At least you have a way to access the rest of the world.
correct. I'm. There's no windows in this room because you don't want the reverberation
Yeah,
necessarily, and you want the sound to be right. And we soundproofed it so people don't. I'm literally in like a box, but it's great for what it's for, and that is the communicating with hopefully not a whole lot of background noise.
absolutely. Seems
Yeah,
to be doing a good job.
I hope so.
So what was your favorite part of building the business?
The favorite part of building the business, first and foremost, was being able to put my own vision into action and not feel like I'm working towards someone else's vision. That's where it really started. And this vision of being able to work with families who maybe, in a lot of cases, were underserved, people who weren't getting the attention from advisors, and creating a way to really reach out to a broad audience. And that was a very exciting thing. I also am one of those people who I want to enjoy the fruits of my own labor. I want to be paid for the work that I do, but also for the success that I have. And I'm willing to take the risk that if I don't have a good month, or, even early on, the first 5 years are very, very tough. I had months where, the income did not meet the expenses. I mean, that's just part of the deal.
Yep.
When I started the company, I hired one full-time, one part-time person, and they got direct deposit on their paychecks, and I didn't because they couldn't always clear.
Yeah.
I paid myself a tiny salary so I could have a small retirement plan because, by gosh, that's what I do for a living. But it really, we started with an idea and good people, and over time, the joy that I've had doing what I do has changed. Like I'm not going to say I've matured. My daughter won't let me say that and with a straight face, but while I haven't matured necessarily, I have evolved professionally. And that means that what brings me joy now is seeing other people succeed. And that means seeing our clients have successful outcomes, whether it's they send their kid to college, or they're able to reach financial independence, or they were able to get that house in the Hamptons, probably not the Hamptons, but someplace nice.
Yeah.
And hitting those goals is fun. And it's also great fun to watch our young people grow into tremendous professionals. We have a really young, really diverse team. It makes us a unicorn in our business. I'll let you in on a little secret that the financial services industry is almost all old white guys.
Yeah.
And I'm not bashing old white
Not that much
guys.
of a secret, actually.
No, no, I don't want to bash old white guys because I am one, but we are not that. We are a young group. We're a diverse group. We're a very engaging group of humans and talented people. And I feel so much pride and so much pleasure in seeing all of them succeed and all of us work together. We built what is a true ensemble. We did not build an agency. A lot of financial firms hire people and they sort of eat what they kill, and they're salespeople.
Yeah.
All of our folks are salaried, not paid based on creating some kind of financial gain for the firm. And all of us work together as a team. So it might be that a new client comes in and it's like, well, who is the right person to work with this family? Who's going to be the right fit? And we can be very objective and agnostic about it rather than saying, oh, no, that's me, mine, me, mine. And so for the right people, we're a great landing spot. And for the wrong people, we're a nightmare because some folks want to do this themselves. And that's fine. But we've built something that I think our clients are really happy with. We listen to stakeholders. But the thing I'm most proud of now is seeing, and it gives me the most pleasure, is seeing our clients have good outcomes and seeing our employees grow into incredible professionals and have good outcomes. I mean, it's not about me at all. It really isn't. In fact, we took my name off the door. Um, BFG was Brotman Financial Group, and it was a very creative way to name the firm when I started it because it was me and my group. But we acquired a firm in Ohio, and they were Benwood Financial Group, and they called themselves BFG, and we called ourselves BFG, and we said, why don't we just call ourselves BFG? Everybody knows it, and it worked out. It was an accident, but it worked out great. And so, the parent company is still Brotman Financial Group Incorporated because of the taxes and all of that. But in terms of the DBA, in terms of client facing and everything else, we're just BFG Financial Advisors, and what the B stands for is largely irrelevant. It can be anything.
Yeah, it depends what what state you're in, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and even then, people don't care. I mean, clients most of them don't care what firm they're with or who their custodian is or who their asset managers are. They just want to know, am I going to be okay? And do I have the right people to call? Or does my widow or widower have the right person to call if something goes wrong, or my kids? Am I going to be okay? And do we have the right person to call who can help navigate the tough stuff? And that's really what it's about.
Yeah, and it's actually quite a unique model that you have as far as, putting people on salary and allowing them to, taking away that sales component, because even some CFPs who I think people understand the difference now, they have a true fiduciary responsibility to their clients and have to put their clients' needs before their own. It's very difficult to do that if you're being paid based on commission. I mean, it might
Yeah.
be subliminal, right? But you're like, oh, I really hope they pick this one because, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it limits what you can offer your clients as well.
There is a human component of that, and we're all fallible. We have an advisory board that we started in 2008. It was perfect timing. It was right before the recession. So I started an advisory board with mostly clients, but also some other advisors we worked with. And we've grown the board now to where in 16 years we've had 3-year terms and people have joined, and there've been focus groups on every kind of, and we listen to people. We really do. And I got funny stories about that, but maybe for another time. But we listen to this group. But we created this advisory board with the idea that um, ultimately we wanted to share what it was like to be in our shoes. And one of our advisory board members who served for a long time, he's deceased now, but an amazing guy, was a psychiatrist or psychologist, I should say, at Hopkins at the hospital. And he said, I had no idea the ethical dilemmas faced by your industry and how similar they are to medicine in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And you can't make it go away. You can't legislate it away. You can't disclose it away. You can't disclaim it away. You can do everything possible to disclose conflicts of interest and to reduce them. But there are ethical dilemmas that we face as people every day. It could be as simple as, do I let this person in on the highway, or do I, make a nasty hand signal at them? I mean, some of it's, I sometimes do the latter. I'm guilty.
That's an easy decision.
Yeah, simple. Let me tell you how I feel. Right, exactly. But we have them, and it's much better to be honest and open about it, I think, and say, look, this is where we are. Our employees are not incented to do that, and I think that helps. I
Yeah.
really do. Um, it doesn't matter to them. We just want to make sure that we're having new clients join, and the clients are staying, and they're happy, and they're engaged, and they're having success. Like, our success is their success, and that aligns us as much as possible. It's not 100%, but it's as much as possible. You do the best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is fun. I love talking to you. I think you're awesome. I'm
Oh,
sure your podcast must be a big hit. I can't wait to start listening to it in January.
well, maybe you'll have to guest on it.
Oh, maybe I will.
I'll put
I have many stories of revitalization at
I
any age you
can
want to choose.
I can put you on my hot seat for a change. Let's
Uh-oh.
let's wear the shoe on the other foot for a while, shall we?
Uh-oh. That
Yeah.
sounds uncomfortable.
Nah, it's all right.
No, that'd be fun. I'd love to do that.
Wonderful.
But at this point, I mean, we're gonna talk about how to reach you and all that
Mhm.
stuff. But is
Yeah.
there anything that you wish I would have asked you that I haven't asked you? Something that you want to make sure people take away from today, or just anything you want to repeat that is really paramount?
The only thing I'll repeat, because you did ask it, and to your credit, I would say, is for people out there who think it's too late, it's not. Start immediately. Start today. Do not wait. Every day you wait is a day you've lost in that regard. And you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to do everything all at once, but take that first step, whether it's hiring someone or getting some additional education or starting, just take inventory. Where are we? And be honest with your spouse or significant other. Where are we? Are we in a good place or not? Do we have a second set of eyes on this? I just think if doing nothing is not the right approach, doing something is always better than doing nothing in this regard. And I hope that people will act on that and find either the ability to do it themselves, or find somebody who can navigate and co-pilot with them, because I do think it makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's both. It's you're not making a decision is a decision in itself, and it's not a good one.
Yeah, I mean, there's running out of money is not exactly like running out of oxygen, but it does feel equally scary in some regards.
Yeah.
We do financial wellness programs for companies and employees, and try and help people in that way too. And I tell people that money is a lot like oxygen. When you have enough, you don't think about it. And when you don't have
Exactly.
enough, it's all you can think about. And that means you're not engaged with your family or your career or anything else. Any of your relationships, they're suffering if you're trying to figure out how to make rent, or how you're going to handle tuition. I mean, that's just a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not lengthening your life, right? Every day that you spend stressed out about something, you're potentially taking an hour or even a whole day off your life. So don't do that.
Please. I mean, there are secrets to happy retirees. I do a lot of public speaking, and one of the talks I give is the 3 secrets to the happiest retirees. I'm not sure if I should tell your audience or not. I guess I will. The 3 secrets to the happiest retirees. The first one is being debt free. Don't owe anybody anything, and not all debt is bad debt. I realize some is leverage, but try to be either adverse debt free or completely debt free. The second thing is to continue to take care of yourself and be healthy in all ways that you can. That means physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, financial health, all the different ways for wellness. Be well, because if any of those suffer, you suffer. And then the third, and the thing that, if I had to look at it as some kind of hierarchy, the one I think is probably the most important, though both those other ones are too, and that's to have purpose, to have that reason to get out of bed every morning, and to feel like you're contributing, and to make sure that you stay not relevant for your own sake, but so that you stay engaged and plugged in. I think if you have a LinkedIn account and your LinkedIn account says retired, it might as well say deceased, because no one's going to say, there's somebody I got to get to know.
Right.
It could say volunteer. It could say dog mom. It could say anything you want, but don't make it just say retired.
Yeah, I'm done.
That's a waste.
Yeah, definitely, definitely true. Awesome. So Eric, I'm going to put this in the show notes, of course, but you want to quickly tell people where they should reach you when they decide that they need to get off the couch and off the fence and get the heck doing something.
Sure, sure. Our company website is bfgfa.com. So that's BFG Financial Advisors, bfgfa.com. And the books and workbooks and online courses and a lot of resources, many of which are free, are available at brotmanmedia.com. And you can check those out. There are white papers on how to pay less tax, how to consider your wellness, how to understand what financial planning is, even how to interview potentially a financial advisor, so you know what questions to ask and what those answers mean. And of course, Amazon.com. Shameless
Don't
plug for the
retire,
book.
graduate.
Don't retire, graduate. It is a book and a workbook. It is an inexpensive path to financial independence, and it's not a textbook. I promise. I tried to make it fun to read. I quote philosophers in the book like Chris Rock. So it's fun to read. It will not feel like a textbook, and hopefully it'll get you on the right path and thinking the right way.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. Thank you so much for being with us.
It's been fun. Thank you.
And thank you, listener, for listening. We really appreciate that you're here. But you know what would be even better? And you know what would help other people to appreciate you is when you share this episode with at least 5 of your friends, because I bet you know people who aren't as ready for retirement as they'd like to be. And even if you think you're ready, wouldn't it be great to have somebody who, well, wouldn't it be great to read the book or to go to the workbook or talk to somebody who who's a real expert who really knows what the heck is up? And be sure to be here next week because who knows what kind of fun we're going to have for you then. Have a good one.